This week, we restart the weekly readings of the Torah with Parshat Bereisheet. In the beginning, the Torah describes creation, or as Rabbi Sachs says, describes the way that creation ought to be. When it reaches the fourth day, the Torah says, God said, "Let there be luminaries in the expanse of the sky to distinguish between day and night. They will be for signs to determine the seasons and the festivals, the yamim and the years." What does the word yamim mean in our verse? While the Hebrew word yom means day, in the Torah the plural yamim does not generally refer to a notion of a single day, but rather to a collection of days. The Midrash Rabbah remarks that in our verse, and also in most other times throughout Tanakh, yamim usually is referring to a month of days. Why would it make sense to say that yamim in our verse must be referring to a month rather than a notion of a single day? Besides for the beginning of the verse already talking about a day, the verse also states that there is a plural, two or more, of luminaries, at the very least the sun and the moon. As such, it must mean that both the sun and the moon must somehow be used to help determine the yamim and the years. Clearly, the sun is related in some way to a year. The moon, then, must be related in some way to yamim, and the minimum measurement related to the moon is a month. More than likely, however, yamim should be taken at face value, and as many of the commentators state, is referring to the notion of a single day, meaning the verse is saying that the lights of the sky, the sun, the moon, and the stars are there to help us measure, determine, and define the days and the years. The plural is not meant to be defining a collection of days, but allowing us to distinguish between one day and the next. Interestingly, the verse only talks about the day and the year. The day is a full cycle of light and darkness. It was evening, it was morning, one day. And the year is also a full cycle of the earth around the sun. But what about the week or the month? Aren't they also determined from nature? As we saw from the verse, the day and the year are built into nature, but the week and the month are essentially constructs. What really determines the length of a month? We base our months on the lunar cycle, but even that is not consistent, as the moon orbits the earth in 29 and a half and a fraction of days. While the orbit itself might be exact, we can never split a day. It must be a complete and whole unit. Hence, the lunar month can be 29 or 30 days, which means that in the end, even a lunar month is not fully determined by nature, but by us. And if we look at non-lunar calendars, such as our secular calendar, a month has barely any connection to the sun or the moon, but rather determined by some seemingly arbitrary calculation and division, seemingly disconnected from nature. Similarly, a week seems to be defined as a small collection of consecutive days grouped together by a seemingly arbitrary factors. Looking throughout history, we see that different cultures created the notion of a week with various number of days. Some cultures didn't even have the concept of a week, only of a month. How then does the world today have a week specifically of 7 days? It comes from us, from the influence of the Torah. As we see from the whole story of creation, 7 days is the divine week. 7 days is God's week. Part of our mission in this world is to help prepare the world to come and accept God. Helping in that direction would be to have the world's time clock aligned with God's time, to put us more in sync. With everyone, without exception, now living and defining the week as 7 days, God's week, the world hopefully is on its way and ready for the next step. Shabbat Shalom.